Hello and welcome to Better Together. We're having a conversation today about healing the divide that can so easily exist right now in our culture, our communities, our nation, between law enforcement and the Black community. We believe, all of us here, that what we need to do is come together rather than come apart. So often the narrative that is happening in our culture says that we can't come together. And so we want to have a conversation about coming together. So my name is John Kinney and I'm the senior pastor of Quest Church in Grovetown, Georgia. And I have three guests with me today. First of all, I have Corporal Scott Harrell with Georgia State Patrol. I have Sarah McDonald, who is the executive pastor at Quest Church. We work together. And I also have my good friend, Yannick Mackey. He is the pastor, the founding pastor of Chosen Church, which meets at Quest Church. We're partnered together. And he's also the president of the Mackey Foundation, which does a lot of work here in our community and across the country. And so we're going to have a conversation here today. And we're going to talk about the divide that so often exists in our communities as it relates to law enforcement and the Black community. And so as we do this, I want to encourage everybody to listen. I've encouraged these folks who are with me today, and myself included, to listen to one another as we have this conversation. We really believe that if we want to come together, if we want to be better together, it begins by having conversations like we're having today, and certainly by listening to one another. So I'm going to start this right off, and I really want to start with you, Yannick, and you, Scott, if it's okay if I call you all by your first names.
Today.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, if I can call you by your first name. We're going to have a conversation. I want to start off by asking you guys a question. And Scott, if it's okay, we'll start with you on this. There's fear that exists in the community. I want to talk about that in terms of two communities. We've talked about, I've already mentioned law enforcement. You represent law enforcement, obviously. You are you in your own person, but you come and you represent law enforcement. Yannick, you come and you represent yourself, but also the Black community. Fear exists in both communities. Fear exists in the law enforcement community, maybe more so now than it has been in the past. Fear exists in the Black community, we know that. Talk about that fear from your perspective. Why is there fear in the law enforcement community? And where does it come from? Why does it exist? How are y'all feeling?
There's always been the fear, I guess, that we won't get to go home to our families at the end of the day, that we're going to get hurt, shot, stabbed, whatever the case may be. That's always been there, and that's something that, as a law enforcement officer, you have to accept that really before you start. I mean, that's the nature of the job that we've signed up to do. Now, though, with the narrative that's being pushed on everybody, we're in fear of, if we go out and do our jobs, are we going to get to go home at the end of the day, or are we going to be arrested for merely doing our job, trying to defend ourselves or defend someone else? We all wake up at the end of the day, we want to make a difference in the community, but we also want to go home at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. We've got families and wives and children, just something to go home to. And the physical, fear or attack that could happen to us that could keep us from going home, that's always been there. And now it's the, are we going to get to go home for merely doing our job? And it's brought a new aspect into the fear, I guess, in this profession.
You mentioned the narrative, and I mentioned it even before, and so kind of pushing on that a little bit, do you feel like, and is there conversation in the law enforcement community about that you all are feeling more afraid than you have in the past because of the things that are happening in culture as it relates to law enforcement in the Black community, and kind of the narrative you said, I think, that's being pushed on us, being written? And I agree with you. I think we would all say that narratives are being written. And one of the things we're wanting to do today is rewrite the narrative. as a church, as a pastor, as a Christian, my desire is to bring people together into relationship, not apart. And so we're talking about that. Are you saying and feeling like that it's more than it used to be in your community?
Yeah, like in the past, it was just the physical dangers you were afraid of, and afraid, but you could push through it, do your job. It's something there, and you accepted that. But now it's the narrative that it's the black community against law enforcement. There's no, you pick a side and you have to be on the side, and that's the end of it. But what I see on a daily basis, that's not that. I don't had many interactions over the last several months, and just very few of those were the narrative that's being pushed upon everybody has even come up. It's just, it's a normal interaction like you would have had in the beginning of the year before the narrative, I guess, was placed on everything.
Unique. You hear this from Scott, from Corporal Harrell. In the black community, fear exists. That's apparent. And explain to us why it exists from your perspective, and then like maybe some response to what our brother here is saying.
Well, I want to start by saying I don't know what it feels like, obviously, to put my life on the line in that sense, as you do on a daily basis. And I can only imagine, how that feels, getting up out of the bed, not knowing that if I'm going to come home, because you're intentionally putting yourself in the line of fire. And so I respect that sacrifice. And it would be extremely frustrating to really be trying to do your job, because you do care about protecting and serving, and not knowing whether or not doing the right thing is going to pay off. So that could be extremely frustrating, I'm sure. From my perspective, and you all know that I work with a lot of at-risk African American males through the foundation, and even some of my own experiences. I think the fear that we feel at times just comes from the origin of policing. If you look at pre-civil rights, pre-Civil War, post-Civil War, Jim Crow, policing wasn't about protecting and serving blacks. It was really about protecting the racial, social structure that was set up. And so for a lot of blacks, knowing that history, and then seeing instances like Michael Brown or Eric Garner, et cetera, where you see a black man in a position and something that was done wrong, obviously not by you, but by this other police officer or this system, you begin to feel as if the system is against you. And we know that we're not dealing with a system all the time. Now, there are some systems that where some police departments where the culture needs to change, because you can have a good police officer in a bad culture and they end up suffering for what someone else did. And so I know for blacks, it's like, it's not necessarily I'm afraid of the individual, it's that I'm afraid of this structure and this system that has oppressed us so much in the past. And so what I try to do is get those who follow me to not blame an individual for what may be the system or the culture, because I know Corporate Harrell. I know that he wants to protect and serve, and And I would be doing an injustice if I stereotyped him, just like he would be doing an injustice if he stereotyped me. And so what we have to try to do is understand that all black people aren't bad. We're not criminals because of the color of our skin. And all police aren't bad because they have a badge and they wear blue. And I think if we can understand that, then we truly can be better together.
Do you all believe, you said something, I think that's really, thank you for sharing what you just shared. Do you all believe there are stereotypes of one another? I mean, seems so. I mean, isn't that the narrative, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, it's just like Unique said, you know, you can't judge an entire race or an entire profession based on the actions of one or two individuals. It's no different than any other profession. You know, you wouldn't blame, you know, you can't hold it against Christianity because one pastor in one church in some remote part of the country did something. No different than you can say, you know, this law enforcement officer did this, or, you know, there's a black man arrested because he committed this crime. Right. It doesn't translate into the entire group, no matter which group you're in, or what you know, what side of the fence you're on.
That's big. I think
It's
something
huge.
y'all are saying is, you know, even what we're doing here, it's just, to me, it gets at you got to see every person as an individual and as a human. I feel like so often things I'll preach and teach and say that you can't turn everything into an issue. When something becomes an issue, you lose the humanity. And you are a real person. You are a real person. We are people. And so that's why we believe we've got to come together and have conversation and be willing to listen to the other side. I don't even love the word side.
Right.
Perspective, but it feels like sides, whatever word works for you, to hear and to listen.
Yeah, we're really on the same side at
Right.
the end of the day, you know, trying to make our communities better.
Yeah.
But as you just said, if we're not careful, we'll begin to listen to the rhetoric and begin to believe that everyone is the same. And as a black man, I can't do anything, or I shouldn't do anything to him that I don't want done to me. I don't want anybody looking at the way I dress or the way I walk or the way I talk, assuming I'm a criminal because of something that they saw on television, or something that they heard, or even something that may have personally happened to them. And if I don't want that done to me, then I shouldn't look at him and believe just because he's a police officer that he's bad, that he doesn't care about me. But because that's not the case either. And so what I really want to see happen on both sides is us to begin to look at each other as allies instead of adversaries. But because if I know that he cares about me, I've got to befriend him because he does have the power to go in and make systemic changes. If he sees something going on that's wrong with the culture that may cause racial disparities, because he knows me, he can actually be an ally and say, you know what, we doing something wrong here. We need to take a look at this, and he has the power because he's a part of the system to make the change. So if I'm walking around, excuse my language, saying F police, then what good does that do? Because like you said, to me, he's not a police. He's an individual that works as a police. And he's a man, and he can help change some of the things about the system that needs to be changed.
So good. I love that. I like how you said, allies, not adversaries. I mean that, and I think some people watching, we long for that, but sometimes we struggle to believe it's even possible, you know. And what we want to be saying is, it is possible, friends. It is possible. It's up to us. If we just continue to believe narratives that are written for us, then we just fall into that narrative. Or we can do what we're doing, have conversations, and listen to one another, get to know each other, and it makes a difference. And we become allies, not adversaries. Sarah, I want to bring you into this. And you have such a unique perspective. The way I see it is you live with a foot in both worlds. Those who know you know this, many watching may not know you, and so they'll say, what do you mean she has a foot in both worlds? When I say both worlds, you have a foot in the Black community and you have one in the law enforcement community. Explain to those watching and listening your perspective, the world you live in.
Yeah, so in our home, my husband is law enforcement. He actually works with Scott with Georgia State Patrol. And I also have a daughter who is Black. And our whole worlds really shifted this year. Yes, we were very much aware that things were different. There's always been tensions and things there. But when all of this happened earlier in the year, it rocked us as a family. It rocked us because what happened was that the narrative we keep talking about was you can either be pro-law enforcement or pro-Blacks. That was it. And there really wasn't a place for me as a mama and as a wife who had both. And so what really hit me was, I was sharing with y'all earlier, was all the things started happening, riots started happening, all of it. My daughter came out and her social media was filled with things, filled with memes, filled with things of the exact phrasing that you were saying, and that all cops should die and all of this. And she came out with tears in her eyes and went up to my husband as he was preparing to go to the riots. We thought that he might get called out for that. And she begged him not to go. And she said the words to him, "They will shoot and kill you. They will not ask, do you love Black people? Or do you have a Black daughter? They'll just kill you." And she begged him not to go. And in that moment, my heart was literally broken in two, because my heart hurt for her, because in her next breath, she would say, "I am scared of the police. I am scared." And she's scared of him when he puts his uniform on, even though he's the same person, he just looks different with uniform.
I remember when you told me that, I was
Yeah.
like, wow, yeah, you know, you talk about how that's just in there.
It's something that's in her, even though she has lived with us for so long and she knows his heart and she knows that he is the father figure in her life. But when his uniform gets put on, she sees him differently. And so we've been working through this, but then this happened, and it was like the fear. And her fear was different. Her fear was the fear of him, but then her fear was somebody's going to kill you and they're not even going to know you. And I think that's what all of this is saying right now, is that nobody's going to come up to you and say, well, who are you, Unique?
Right.
Nobody's going to come up to you before they decide to take it out on you and say, well, Scott, who are you? Like, do you like the community? Do you like this? Are you a good cop? Are you a bad cop? You know, all of this. And that's what this sweet child told me. And then I was thinking on the way over here, the things that she has to think of as a 14-year-old, you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to be thinking about, is my daddy going to be killed when he walks out the door? She shouldn't even have to be thinking about, will she be targeted? Will she be killed when she walks out the door? There's all of this in one. And then what was even harder for all of this was I felt like I couldn't even have a voice. I felt like I couldn't even share the heartache that I felt for my child. I felt like I couldn't even be able to say, actually, I do think her life matters and that there are changes that need to happen so that she can have the same rights and privileges that my other children have in my own house. But then I want to be able to say, I love and support my husband who puts on the same uniform that Scott does, and I care about his life. Because at the end of the day, I want both of them to come home. And I also want that when we sit around the dining room table, that we can talk about our days and not about who targeted them against something. Because everything has changed with that. And what it says is, if I can have the conversation at my dining room table, people can have it at theirs. People can sit around a table just like this and be able to share, be able to say, I don't understand this, I don't understand that, and even be able to walk away from the table, maybe still not understanding why you believe the way you do or why you believe the way you do, but we've had a conversation. And that child's life matters. My husband's life matters. Not because of the color of their skin or the uniform they put on, because they matter to God. Yeah. And that's my heart with it. And if a 14-year-old can bridge a divide, we adults can. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Wow, Sarah. I mean, I know that story, but every time I talk to you or hear it told again, it's so inspiring. And it makes me think about what we talk a lot about at our church, which is the next generation. Mm-hmm. And that we owe it to the next generation, our children. All of us have children, all of the children out there, mm-hmm. to have these conversations and to give them a better world than we're experiencing right now. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be coming together rather than coming apart. And I thank you for sharing that story. It takes courage to share that and to live with a foot in both worlds. I was sitting here just thinking as you were talking, I was like, we all need to live with a foot in both worlds. Yes. That's really what this is about. If we want to come together, if we want to be better together, like we keep saying, it's going to take Unique. You got to put a foot in his world, and you got to put a foot in his world, and I've got to put in both worlds. And we have to live in that reality. And so that's really what we wanted to do today, was simply to hear from folks from different perspectives and to have a conversation with you who are watching and listening. And again, what I hope happens is you've listened. It's so easy to just give your opinion about why you're right and somebody else is wrong. I would ask that you would think and hear and listen to the other side, the other perspective. I also feel like Unique and I talk about this a lot. We've become good friends over the last few years. Our churches work together. We're partnered together, a black church and mostly white church, and so we've come together, and we believe we're better together than apart in a partnership and relationship with one another. And for us, we talk all the time about it's the relationship. I think people watch us sometimes go, do they really have a relationship? We really have a relationship.
Right. Tough for them to believe I really like you.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Why you always say it that way?
Yeah. I do, y'all.
I mean, we were out to dinner the other night, our wives and us, and I mean, this is what we do. We have relationship with one another. And so I think one of the best things that folks can do, because it feels like it's such a big problem. How can we make a difference? You can get to know somebody who's different than you, and that's how you come together as well. I wonder, any last thoughts? I'll close us out, but thank you so much for sharing with the folks who are watching this, listening to this.
I just want to encourage everyone to try to make allies instead of adversaries. Yeah, that's good. I think that's the key, and to do that, you can't just spew your thoughts on social media. You can't look at a meme and believe that that's truth. I think we owe it to our community, and if you go to church, you certainly owe it to your church, and if you believe in God, you certainly owe it to God to be used to reconcile relationships. And we know that we don't live in a perfect world. We know things need to change, but the way things change is to sit down and talk and hear both sides, because when you do that, you can win an ally, and with allies, they can work on your behalf and begin to make things better for the things that you care about. And so I just want to personally thank you for listening, and we've talked several times at this point, and being one of the good ones that really do want to help make things better for not just the black community, but our community as a whole. So
from the law enforcement side, I mean, the goal for the vast majority, we want a better community. I mean, for everybody. We live in the community too. When I was getting ready to go to work Wednesday morning, I was taking my trash out just like my neighbors were down the street, going to their office jobs and their whatever. And, I was, going out to, people don't like what we do sometimes. That's the nature of the job. They don't want to be told what they can and can't do. And that, so we in the law enforcement, we get it. Like they're not gonna love us. We're not firefighters. Everybody doesn't love us.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I mean, we want to live in a safe community, and for everybody. So
I think that's cool because that's what everybody at this table wants. I think everybody at this table wants our community, this community, to be able to come together. Because what we've said, because we're all better together, and that's what I love is that, you know what? Maybe all this was happening in the world so that we could do this, so that it would bring it together. Because we all know it. Like God is going to make good come out of all the things. And so what he's doing right now and what he can do in this community if we listen and if we do it, I think that, I know in this area especially, but across our nation, man, we can make some real change. But we have to change ourselves first and listen to others and then be able to be held accountable for things and say, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with what you said. And then be able to go with it. And then, this next generation coming up, watch out.
That's right.
It's all about, if you're not gonna do it for you, do it for those kids. Do it for them. That's awesome.
As we close this out, it's interesting to me, and everybody's at a different place in their spiritual journey and may or may not claim Christianity or Christ. We do, as those who lead in churches and in our community, but God listened to the needs of the world and sent Jesus Christ. And so he's come to heal us and to bring us together. And in fact, statements were made about Jesus and who he was, and in Christ we're one. In fact, it says there is no black or white or law enforcement against the black community and black community against law. In Christ, there's one narrative, and that narrative is unity and oneness. So I would especially say to the Christians tuning in that that's the narrative we're called to. We have no other choice, and we need to join in the effort, like Unique said, I think, and Scott said, and Sarah said, to live in both worlds and to make allies, not adversaries, because God loves us all, and he wants to let all of us know that and be in relationship with us. We wanted to do something beyond have a conversation, and so the Georgia State Patrol is wanting to put on an event, and we're going to partner with them. So our church, where Sarah and I work, and Unique, where he serves, through Chosen Church, which is partnered with us in this location, we are going to host an event this coming Saturday called Kids and Cops. And so we're inviting the community out to Kids and Cops. It's going to be this coming Saturday, October 10th. It's from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. So you just come out to our location. It'll be listed here on the screen. 5001 Gateway Boulevard in Grovetown if you live in this area. 10 to 12 this Saturday, and there will be some activities. There will be law enforcement. I think they'll be able to see your vehicles and different things like that, all right? We'll be safe with that, obviously, with social distancing rules and all that kind of stuff that's going on right now. But we want to invite the community out. We think it's worth it, and we think that it's a way to get to know each other. Come meet somebody who has a different life than you have and a different perspective, and we're just going to enjoy that time together. So thank you so much for tuning in and joining us. Thank you all so much for sharing and being a part of this. I think it's been so helpful to have this conversation. Let's have more of these conversations. We hope it starts conversations wherever you are, because we are better together than we are apart. Thank you for joining us.
you